San Diego, California, this is the Frug Life Podcast, the show that teaches you how to save, invest, and earn money. Here's the host, Mr. Frugal himself, Ricky Hershey.
Welcome to the Frug Life. Today's episode is titled, No More Sports Betting, Mario. And the topic should be no surprise to you. It is on sports betting and my opinion on why you shouldn't do it. Somewhat directed at my coworker Mario, who may or may not be spending too much time on sports betting. So let's start with what is a zero-sum game. In essence, a zero-sum game is where the victory of one player comes at the expense of the other player. An example of this is sports betting, where if you make a bet, there's a winning party and there's a losing party. And in total, there's just money shifting hands between those two parties, right? There's no wealth creation. It's just the passing of money from one party to another. I think this is in contrast with something like investing, where you put money into a stock or an ETF or something to that effect, and over time, it's expected that that stock will have a return. Of course, the actual return can vary, and you may not get the expected return. In general, though, we expect investments to increase in value. Whereas a zero-sum game, like sports betting, is kind of a coin toss. You might win, you might lose. And at the end of the day, unless you have some kind of statistical advantage or advantage in data or advantage in process, you're going to win 50% of the time at best. There's an important caveat to keep in mind here, though. And my understanding is that you're not going to get 100% of the proceeds of your bets, right? In essence, the platform you use probably is going to take a cut of your winnings. So it's actually not entirely a zero-sum game, right? The house is always going to win, right? The person facilitating the bet, if they're taking a percent fee, is going to get that fee no matter what. And so the bettors are going to lose money and the platform is going to get money. So all things equal, even if you win as much as you lose, right, you're probably still losing money due to those platform fees. I guess I should caveat this for a second and say I actually don't know anything about sports betting in particular, but I think there's some things we can infer, and I think it's safe to infer that the platforms are going to take a cut, because how else are they going to make money? Anyways, if you don't have some kind of advantage, I think at best you'll win 50-50, or potentially even worse than that. And if you do win 50% of the time, you're going to lose money. So now let's talk about information and statistical advantage, right? You might think that looking at the history of a player or the history of some event, you can determine the likelihood of that event happening in the future. And to a limited extent, that might be true, but likely all the other sports bettors are looking at that same information as you and factoring that into their betting decision. Said another way, I believe sports betting markets in general are efficient markets, and this has been corroborated with a few other people I've spoken to. The idea is similar for stocks, right? Basically, there's two ways to analyze stocks: technical analysis and fundamental analysis. Technical analysis looks at trends in like price and in historic data, basically, and fundamental analysis looks at more current data in helping determine the value of a stock. The problem with technical analysis is that historical information is publicly available, and so everyone has this information, and so everyone can use it in developing their price predictions. And so people do. And so the price already reflects this data. Likewise with sports betting, if a player has a history of doing something, that history is factored into the likelihood that that event will happen again. And so unless you have a model that is better at predicting outcomes than what the market predicts, what the sports betting market predicts on its own, then you don't have an advantage. Just looking at history is not necessarily going to give you an advantage. You probably need something more sophisticated than that. So if you are just a casual sports bettor, just dabbling here and there, I'd say your chances of making money doing so are very slim, right? If you did develop a very sophisticated model and you went out and were able to more accurately predict events, accurately enough to also overcome the fees, right, that are going to be built into this sports betting, then you potentially could have a chance at making some money. However, given the sports betting markets are efficient, I think it's not super likely. So all this to say, just dipping your toe in sports betting, I think is not going to lead to a desirable outcome. I think you're probably just going to lose money. Granted, there is an aspect of luck to it, so you could always get lucky, I suppose, but on average, and the longer you do it, you probably will not make money. All right, let's take a quick break and we will be right back. All right, welcome back. So there's a few more things I want to talk about briefly. The next part is time, Mario. You are wasting time sports betting. Okay, I'm just kind of teasing, but it's true. Your time is worth money. There's an opportunity cost every time you do something. It's something else you aren't doing. And so by giving something your focus, you're also taking focus off something else. So you may want to consider the value of your time when you engage in an activity, particularly a zero-sum game. Speaking of which, I actually have an episode already about zero-sum games. I will add a link to it in the show notes. I guess at this point I have so many episodes I don't even remember what I've spoken about before, but I did speak about this. That said, I did focus on sports betting a little bit more. Lastly, I'm going to note something called match betting, which is something that people promote all the time. I'm not very familiar with it. Maybe we'll cover it more in detail. Actually, maybe someone will approach me and say they want to cover it for me on the show. In essence, though, I think the idea is that it's a way to make money from sports betting, and that's because there is like some party matching your bet for you, or I don't really understand how it works. I think it has to do with like some kind of promotion when you join a sports betting platform. I guess it's a roundabout way of saying that potentially there's some way to make sports betting with some extraneous factors, some like promotion where fees are waived and I don't know, you bet $100 and they count it as if it was $200. All of that I think is generally some way to entice you to get addicted to sports betting, ultimately making the company money and costing you money. All right, well, thanks for listening to today's episode of The Frug Life. I hope you enjoyed. Until next time, and as always, stay frugal.